Hello, everyone, and welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. This is a podcast where writers sit around drinking tasty beverages to talk about writing, publishing, and the whole creative process. There will be rants and raves and opinions that may not agree but are lovingly delivered. We do not censor ourselves, so consider us PG-13. This is episode 216, somewhere in Lisa Czarina Michaud's Hollywood. Welcome back, Lisa.
Hi, thanks for having me. Long time no speak.
I mean, it's been a while. For those of you who missed episode 117, or with a short attention span, or who have just found us, we last chatted with Lisa about her premiere novel, Slanted and Disenchanted, which I loved it. It was set in 2001, and you used the events of 2001 as a backdrop for your characters starting to figure out their lives. So I appreciated the political turmoil and upheaval of post 9/11 2001 in both road trips and how we get across the world and what happened. So I would love it if you would tell everybody about Carla and Pete and give us a summary about how your main characters got across the country from New York to Hollywood.
So my first book, Slanted and Disenchanted, it's a dual POV between a 20-year-old guy and girl, and they both love music. They collect vinyls, make mixtapes, CDs, because it takes place in 2001. And they are two college dropouts kind of wandering around their suburban town of Long Island. They went to high school together, but they weren't really friends. She was kind of like the weird girl, and he was the half French soccer playing, music prodigy who has a secret. And they find each other after high school and they're about to turn 21. And they both realize how much they love music, even if their favorite bands are like conflicting genres. But together they start a garage band that's kind of garage rock, proggy. I kind of mix all the genres in it just because I love music so much.
I want to be fair, half of the bands there aren't just one sort of thing. I mean, Beyonce just won a country music award. Go her.
It's true. And the thing is that back in like 2000, when I went into high school, what you listened to very much defined who you were. The example I love to use the most is like my brother was a Fish head who loved West Coast rap. Like he would listen to NWA and Fish. And in the 90s, it was considered weird. Like I remember somebody telling me that my brother was inconsistent. And now in 2025, I think it's fantastic. All of the genres have crossed over where you can listen to Beyonce and rock out to Fish and say you like Yes. And we are all family. And I love that we're at this kind of like musical, togetherness right now. But back then it was very much like the rock kids hung out with the rock kids, the rap kids hung out with the rap kids, and there wasn't this crossover. So I did talk a lot about that. And what's funny is that I have younger readers who don't get that. And so they kind of think the characters are snobs or elitist. And it's not that at all. It's just that I wanted to portray the characters exactly how they would speak in 2001, whereas they're going to grow over time. And maybe Pete's going to like the Backstreet Boys and Miles Davis's Bitches Brew. Who knows? Stay
Yeah,
tuned.
Pete's never gonna like the Backstreet Boys.
Thank you for saying that. Somebody got so mad. I read a review being like, this guy is a jerk. He hates the Backstreet Boys. And I'm like, did you read the part where he said Bitches Brew kind of changed his life? But it's everyone's experience. It's their experience. I don't judge it, but
He will acknowledge their seminal influence on spoken word style music, but he's never gonna listen to them as a casual thing. They're not angsty enough for him, I think. Or what he likes more than I do. I don't know. I read the second book and it felt like a romance to me, a romance between music and the characters with some incidental very hotness thrown into it. I loved your book, by the way, this second one. And I got to say to all those people who listen, yeah, they get across the country, but the novel is very much a standalone. You don't need to read the first novel to really enjoy the second novel.
I would agree with that.
Oh, wow.
So sorry, Lisa. Again, we love your book.
We love your book.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you. So
I,
yeah, so they make it across the country and then we pick up where in California where they end up. The last book ends with them in LA, and the new book ends with their life now 4 years living in Los Angeles and who they've become. Who are they 4 years after being college dropouts? And that's where we pick up.
Well, I thought it was tasty because in a way it is another love letter to the more modern Hollywood. Now, when I chatted up Richard Kadri, I had to say his Sandman Slim novels are very much a love letter to 1970s Hollywood. And you let Hollywood grow up with the times. You let Hollywood all the way back up into the 2000s and okay, the good side, the bad side, the ugly side, the boring side. And there's a lot that's boring anywhere. And people who think, I'm going to go to Hollywood, it's going to be magic. I'm like, well, is it, or is it going to be more of what you've got?
My brother lived in Hollywood in the early 10s, so a little bit later than your story. And his experience was so well essentially said in your book. My experiences, my reflections on Hollywood through his eyes, it was like, oh yeah, okay, he's probably standing two guys over right now. Just, oh yeah, complete
Yeah.
with maniacal, maniacal. I don't know. I don't think they're chained to anything. Suicide bicyclists and disaffected ingenues with smoky eyes, which is how I imagine her to be, and a sense of we're all doing something really hard, but we're not 100% sure it's a thing we should be doing.
Totally. Yeah, that's exactly it. I broke up the book in two parts. So the beginning I wanted to show like the mundane part of Hollywood. You still have to work, you still have to pay your rent. If you're not, Brad Pitt, you're still hustling like you would do in St. Louis, Chicago, New York. And then I wanted to have a little more fun with him. With the second half of the book, I made it the glitzy side because, that came from personal experiences. I did find myself in really weird parties where all of a sudden I turn around and Jennifer Lopez is standing right there, so there is that aspect, but that was like maybe 1% of the time of me living in LA. So I wanted to show the two sides, kind of give the readers what the title promises a little bit with a little glamour. But, at the end of the day, they're just, everyone has to pay rent. So,
It's welcome to Hollywood, and yes, everyone has to pay rent. I had a friend visiting from Australia once, and he's like, "Oh, is anything true?" And I'm like, "Watch how true this is." And we were sitting at a restaurant on Santa Monica Pier, and our waitress came up, and I said, "Wait, didn't I see you in a commercial?" I was lying. And he exploded, yes, absolutely. And he bubbled at us that he had done this commercial and that commercial. And he walked away. And my friend Bruce, because he was from Australia, so they're all named Bruce there, looked at me like, I see what you mean.
that's incredible. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, I was a waitress in LA and I had a coffee shop table, a coffee shop counter that I would work at. And there was this one guy I would talk to all the time. We had the same people come in the morning, they got the same thing. And it took me leaving LA to find out that table one, seat one was James Franco, and seat four was Jason Statham this entire time. I had no idea. And I would talk to them about boyfriend problems because it would be early in the morning. I worked the 6 a.m. shift, and they came in every morning and they sat a few seats away from each other. And then when I was back in New York working, I'm like, oh my God, that guy, he used to come into my coffee shop. And then I look at his IMDb. I'm like, oh, he was totally famous when I was working there. And it's just so LA. It's like only in Hollywood would
He
that
was
happen.
so thankful you didn't fangirl all over him when all he wanted was a cup of coffee and a moment to do his morning thing.
Totally. And hear me complain about boys, which I did. I was 21. I'd be like, oh my God. And I would tell them these stories and they were so entertained. And I worked there for years. So
Absolutely. Well, welcome to Hollywood gives you that. And I wanted to throw out and say, often in books, I have been frustrated when the main premise would be wiped away if you just want to grab the two characters and say you should talk to each other. But in a lot of ways, you pull it off in a way that I can deal with. And I loved that because it is very much.
They do talk to each other, but
They
they
do.
can't talk to each other because, well, there's music and well, And, you know, the foot shuffling that's taking place on one hand, it's like, if you just had a sensible conversation, they can't have a sensible conversation.
I did
They are
feel
youths.
I felt like 20 again reading it. So
Yes. Oh my God. Oh, and I have to say, I loved your book as a romance, not in the sense of the modern formulaic romance, but in the sense of the comedy of manners that the original romances were, and it was a very open romance because, of course, music was always in the room. So kinky. Every scene had music.
Yes, yes, they definitely like you know, it puts you in the time period. You know, I tried to I remembered. I didn't try to remember. I remember what I was listening to. That apartment building is completely autobiographical. The landlady is a very real person who I spoke to 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to, you know, at the time it was like a lot of this like folk indie going with, you know, this indie rock happening. Beck's Sea Change was a really huge part of 2004 if you were living in any of these like hipster enclaves.
Like the West Coast.
Yeah, yeah, the whole West Coast. So I needed to have that, you know, music had to be a part of the story at all points. One of the things I really had to put in there was the Volkswagen commercial with the Nick Drake song,
yeah.
because that was such a popular commercial for my generation. When that came out, everybody wanted a Volkswagen after it. And it was the first time you know, we kind of saw indie rock fusing into the mainstream, even though that Nick Drake album came out in the 70s. It was kind of a quiet, pivotal moment for the indie to become crossing over into the mainstream. And so I had to put that in there somewhere. And I did put it in there in one of the Carla's Mind Musings. But there was just so many moments like that in the 2000s, the early 2000s, where indie rock became what it is now. Now it's like, it was a cottage industry now. Now it's just like $1 billion business. It's the seeds of it becoming mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
It's also very much Welcome to Hollywood, a book about complicated relationships, because it's not just the relationship of Carla and Pete, which doesn't yet really exist. I mean, they're friends, but they don't know it. It's each of their own relationships with music. It's each of their own relationships with how are they building community? How are they building people around them? And it's hard because it's like you have to decide, am I going to have an affair with this guy or this Stratocaster, or
or both.
Or both, you know?
Which is where the kink of the music comes in. But I have to disagree with you. A main motive force in the book is the relationship between the two main characters.
Well, yes.
It's just not a standard romance, meet cute boy meets girl thing, because they're already tied through the music, and negotiating that triad is impossible. So they have to... I mean, I can't reveal any more because it's so well written in the book. I want you to discover it in the book, oh dear listener.
Well, I mean, there's very famous inter-polyamorous cubes that have had gone wrong. I mean, Fleetwood Mac had a tremendous breakup and then wrote songs that made each other sing the "You broke up with me and broke my heart" in front of millions of others, and still musically and interrelationship a triumph.
Yeah.
And so I loved it at the end when Carla is a creative force for creating music, and Pete as naturally the young, how did you use the word, a prodigy?
Yes.
And how do you get those two things together? He is a musical prodigy, but not create something from nothing as much as Carla is, sort of way. So in a way, they need each other. And I love that it takes them so long to figure that out.
Riffing on that, see the music reference there. It also gives you permission to be different kinds of creative, which is a nice thing in a book that people who talk about writers are going to talk about.
Yeah.
Because they had completely different processes that worked better together, at least from my reading of the book. And that part, that look into the creativity, especially from my point of view, the performance edge that was gained, and again, not saying any more, go read the book, really was a very positive point of the book, because you, again, lay out more of a real life scenario than a prescriptive, you must do this. It's like, no, here's one way it happens. So anyway, just saying again, we love your book.
Thank you. Yeah, well, Carla comes more from like this the street smarts, Italian girls, it's built in. And she's just going to go with the gut. And Pete's a little more classically trained. And so I wanted to have the meeting of those two minds, and that creates a musical harmony, not so much personal harmony, but the idea is that they can communicate through music more than personally. And I got a little pushback because some people, readers felt that Carla and Pete didn't have chemistry. And it was a little bit by design. That's what happens. It's like when you want to like sleep with your friends, things get weird. And so it's a little,
I definitely felt chemistry, but it was chemistry in the purest lab sense of you can't tell if glass is hot or cold until you touch it, and that means you're going to get burned. So maybe don't touch things randomly.
I don't know. I thought it was clear that he was attracted to Carla, but, didn't want to screw something up, and it was complicated by the fact that he was starting having very physical, emotional feels about exploring different aspects of his newfound sexuality, and that it's complicated, and that he wasn't sure she could accept it. He wasn't sure that he could accept it yet.
And there was a whole element of their birth cultures and of the new culture they found themselves in, which felt like it gave them room to do exploration and got them over that I can't be right about what's going on because that could never happen. No, they were in a place where possibilities were wider. Indie rock could be sung in a bar.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And he had said in the opening of the book, we would be sitting here as ex-boyfriend and girlfriend. And he knew that they weren't going to get together at 22, 21, 22, and live happily ever after. It was unrealistic. And he kind of has that foresight because he wanted to explore his sexuality, and he kind of kept them at arm's length. And then there was also a social message I baked in there as well. We're in 2025. We're so open about who we are, and it's fantastic. Going back to like the music genres, how we're crossing over. But being bisexual in 2004 was very, very confusing. And Carrie Brownstein, the guitarist of Sleater-Kinney, she's bisexual, and she talked about this as well, where you were just kind of men were accused of just being like waiting to become gay, and women were just attention hungry or drunk. And it was dismissed. Bisexuals were very much dismissed at this time. Right now, it's open and there's a space to explore that, to express that. But in 2004, it wasn't. It was just a weird time to be that. And so I wanted to touch on that and Pete mentions, depending on which biography you read, Mick Jagger is supposedly bisexual, David Bowie was, and Arthur Rimbaud, the poet, the French poet. So I wanted to touch on that, where he's not just going to be out and proud because it wasn't the time yet.
It wasn't. I actually recall having a couple gay and lesbian friends that told me in all seriousness, and this was, I'm sorry, people, you may not remember, but I remember everything. I am Union. There were people that said, no, there's no bisexual. There's just people in denial about being gay or lesbian.
Yes.
And maybe it was a necessary process to get through that. It exists. It doesn't exist. We want you to be like us. We're already bucking the system. You're trying to be in our world and your world without acknowledging that yet there was another world out there to be in. And so the fact that you very clearly set this in 2004, I think these kind of books are important to remind us of how things are changing through every decade.
It feels, and this is a horrible comment, I apologize ahead of time, kind of like a WPA photojournal. You have taken a snapshot in words of a time that a lot of people would gloss over. And it's not a Roman a clef. The phrase in literature has escaped me, but it's a really good reminder of all of these things, all of these yearnings. That's one thing the book did so well, was portray on so many different levels how the yearnings got in the way of the characters and how much more relaxed we are now, to a degree.
Yeah, to a degree. We have a ways to go, but that was just something that I really remember. Like, I have bisexual friends, and people be like, "Oh, are you gay this week?" And saying these kinds of things. And it was just, I remember being like, God, that's gotta hurt, So I wanted to really portray that to show we have come a long way and there's more of a sense of community and we can be different. And as much as it kind of feels like we're regressing, maybe we can also look at the progress we have made.
I wanted to bring up, Lisa, I have one thing that I found not realistic, and I wanted to throw
Uh-oh.
it at you.
I'm scared.
You
Uh-oh.
ready? Because, like everybody in the 90s, I was in a band, everybody was in a band. The idea that you could write a set list, have all new words for the whole set list, and fucking remember all of your words to perform it a week later. That was where I doubted you.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to come down on the other side of that one. If you're the person who did the words,
Nope.
yeah, our experiences are different.
I wrote a lot of songs. I don't remember all the words to them yet.
I don't.
Well, they actually ended up not playing any of those songs, and there wasn't actually any real lyrics in what they ended up playing. It was just like kind of sound effects. Maybe I didn't write that clear enough.
You sort of wrote a little bit that it was, snatches of song, etc. But the song had to have been in her heart. And I think that was how I rationalized it, as saying, okay, the tone, the feel, the shape of this song is something she came out with. But yeah, that was the only thing that made it okay. It's like I was willing to forgive a little bit when you had, oh yeah, the words they're just sort of sound bit words. Something about yearning.
Yeah, I wanted to make up for that because I was aware of that too. But I needed that as a device to keep them apart. And so when they're like big, you know, reunion is on the stage, I had that was like for some big dramatic moment. But I did feel that way as well. So that's why I was like, and then they played something different where nothing made sense. And it was just loud music that sounded really good. But I can
I
appreciate
forgive
that.
you and I take it back.
No, you're in agreement. She intentionally did that to
Okay,
you.
fair.
Yeah, I took that because another thing, actually, the first draft of the book, I had them being like a functioning band, just making ends meet. But however, Carla and Pete don't come from money. So to be an up and coming band in LA, you can't really have too much of a day job and you need some parents to help with the rent. And I knew a lot of bands in LA and in New York who were able to do the whole rock and roll greasy hair thing because their parents were paying their rent. And so I wrote one draft of that and it made no sense to me. I'm like, who's paying their bills? Because in Slanted, their parents don't have money. Their parents would not fund a band. So I rewrote it to what we have now because I do want things to be realistic. That is very important to me. So
I hear it, and you didn't sugarcoat it. You could have even gone further and said, okay, her day job, she was an extra. Her night job, she was in a coffee shop.
yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean, kids who I put myself through school, and which meant that I always worked two jobs, sometimes three. And I could see that for knowing the rents in Hollywood in the 2000s. You are absolutely correct. It is not cheap. It is not, you're not going to get a nice place. You can get a crappy place. And this is sort of what it's going to be like. So you did not glamorize that at all.
Yeah, that was definitely very important because that first draft, it didn't ring true to me because I just kept going, how are they paying for all of this? And so that was important to me because I do have some fans of Slanted. They're like, wait a minute, they're not in the band. Wait, hold on. And they were like frustrated that I didn't have them like being like this, like the next Strokes. And I'm like, it's not realistic because the Strokes didn't have day jobs. Sorry. Like I read Meet Me in the Bathroom. None of those bands had day jobs. And that's fine. I'm not like, it's not like a class war. I don't resent them. But it does help when you don't have to pay rent and you can just focus 100% on your band.
Absolutely. And you go faster, farther. And
Yeah.
it's also getting the gigs. And at least I can say for LA, how you got them a gig together again was, again, reasonable and realistic. Because people say, oh, it's talent, it's this. I'm like, it's luck. And
Who yeah.
luck and timing and somebody who knows you and likes you at the right moment and remembers you. And that, again, was a very realistic, doesn't set wild expectations. And for everybody that, again, wants to dump everything and move to Hollywood to be in your book, which, they should do. It's not that easy. Make friends. Do the emotional labor of keeping in contact with people.
Yeah.
Store your van at a place where other bands will see it and leave your name on the side so they remember you. I do have to give a shout out to the bicycle trip across town with the mixtape. That's all I need to say. It was lovely. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so, so much. That means a lot to me. That took like 4 weeks to write. And I mapped out, I actually even timed out the songs
Yeah.
with the distance. So if you did that trek at around 8:45 in the morning, it has to be during the week, the songs will play through perfectly. And then I had AI double check.
And you were a good bicyclist and knew how to survive the LA streets and you were relatively fit. No, it was not obvious that you put a lot of work into it. It was written so well that it didn't seem that you put a lot of work into it in that, oh, this is just the way it is what came through. But having bicycled through cities with mixtapes back in that time, you got it perfectly. Okay, hey, I'm coming up to the push and yes, there we go.
Yep. I was a bike rider in LA because I was always having car problems. I could never afford it. I was always like stripping my clutch, burning my clutch out. And so I just said, all right, let me work a few shifts. Let me get a bike. And when I'm in a car situation, I'll just park my car at my friend's house so I don't get
Hmm.
towed. And I rode my bike all the time out through LA without a helmet. PS, which, the mom version of me is scolding 20-year-old me. And with my headphones on, I used to always have the buses honking at me on Sunset Boulevard to fucking move. Like, it's a miracle I'm sitting here right now. The stuff we do.
But that gives it that authentic edge. And it's not just, they say, write what you know and go read things and or not write what you know, but I can see and feel the experiences that you had living in LA through this. The same one with Slanted and Disenchanted. I could feel your inner New Yorker. And so in this one, I do appreciate the way that you had realistic experiences on a bike, living in a crappy apartment, being involved in a music scene, working multiple jobs. That does come out. Welcome to Hollywood is a very real feeling book, and that's awesome about it.
Oh, thank you very much. Oh, and I was an extra, so that was pulled from that experience as well because it was so hard getting the waitress job that I talk about. It took me a year and a half to get the waitressing job. Everyone says like, "Oh, you'll just get a little coffee shop gig." Yeah, right. You
You're
you needed
competing with every other actor and actress for those coffee shop gigs.
they would put your resume on top of 20,000 other ones, all with glossy headshots, and it was just so demoralizing. And so a friend of mine was like, "Why don't you just go to Central Casting? You'll be on set tomorrow." And I was like, "You know what? Okay, fine." And I did it.
I admit I a little bit thought of Ricky Gervais's Extras. Did you ever watch it?
Yes, and it's completely when I watch that show, I go, "Yep, yep, that's the way." It's perfect. It's like a subculture of a subculture of a. It's like the belly of the underbelly of Hollywood. But what's fun now, 20 plus years later, I see myself. So I showed my son all the shows I had worked on, and you see me in the background with a backpack on, or I worked on this one show called American Dreams where it's based in the 60s. And so I would have like bouffants and eyelashes and dancing to the Kinks. And my son is like, "Oh my God, my mom is famous." Not,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So are you working? I mean, you can't leave us where you left us. Are you working on the?
I won't call it a cliffhanger, but I hunger for more of them.
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Yes, I'm looking right now at my map for the third book, and I know exactly where they're going, and it's going to close up the series, and I think everyone's going to be really happy how we put about.
Talk to us about your map. Don't gloss over that. It's your map of how you're figuring out what you're doing. Future writers out there are going to listen and say, "Wait, map."
Yeah, well, I break it down into a beat sheet. I like to use the Save the Cat story beats. So it's broken up into three acts, one, two, and three, where you have the just opening image of where your characters are, and then the beats take you through their transformation until you get to the end, until they're completely different people from page one to
And
from
just to
page.
make clear, if someone goes and looks at Save the Cat, they'll understand beats and acts.
Yes, if you type in
Thank you.
Save the Cat, There's a novel version and then there's a screenwriting version. And I veer off the map, but I write it first, and then when I sit down and write, I'll go off of it. Like my all both of my books don't aren't loyal to the beat sheet. It sounds like a band, but I like to at least
Yeah, that's why I wanted the clarification.
the
The
beat.
the French American beat sheet with Italian accents there. That's you writing. Okay, but that's really good input about process there, in that you create your form, then you write your. Tell me when I get this wrong. You write your first draft, and then you'll go ahead and step away from the skeleton, from the beat sheet, from that form as you make it right, make it perfect.
Yeah, as their experiences become more lived in and become mine, it's always awkward at first because I'm like, I'm still in the last book and now I have to pull myself out of it. And we're jumping to 2009 now. So I have to pull myself out of 2004 and just really think about what they've been doing for the past, 4 years, where we are in pop culture.
Mm.
What happened in 2009? Where are we? We have a new president, great. Kanye West took the BMA from Taylor Swift. Okay. And so I had to think of like what's going on and just little things just to place my brain in there. But 2009 is going to be tricky for me because I left the United States in 2009. I was in France. So I want to touch on a lot of these pop culture touch points. It's this one's going to be a little trickier for me. And in terms of music, I was listening to Serge Gainsbourg because I was trying to learn French. So I was on another planet where my characters are going to be. So I'm going to have to really, really kind of sink my feet into another time period and a place I wasn't even at.
I wouldn't mind if you took us to where you were, but that's one small voice in a sea of fans crying out. So
I'm waiting until these two, and if they end up together, which I don't assume, but I hope they do. If they end up together, I'm imagining them in the years 2025, and they're on vacation down to Costa Rica somewhere, and they're sitting there having, at a bed and breakfast, becoming increasingly incensed because they're finally understanding the truth of somebody saying, okay, AI, make a song that sounds like Phil Collins is in the air tonight, only do it with a mambo beat in the background and a female vocal go.
no, that's too far. Give me my nostalgia. Put me back in 2005 when pop music was the whole I don't even want to think
But
about
it was humans doing music, and
I know, isn't it terrible? I know. I know. I was like, I don't even want to see Carla and Pete during the pandemic. And I think about them wondering where I don't want to know about what Carla and Pete think about what's going on now in the world, which I'm going to stay away from. But my head explodes thinking about what Pete, especially right now, what he's thinking of. So I think I'm going to wrap up the book at 2014 and just leave it at that.
that's fair. That's fair. I mean, it's just an opportunity. And like I said, part of it is to go and I love that you do go and make that year real. I think I said the first episode, you dealt with the fact that they were driving across country right after 9/11, and they dealt with that. And they had problems, with people saying, well, your hair is very dark and your eyes are very dark. I'm a little sus about you, etc. And that's the glory of it, is that you
using
made
a
it real.
2020 word.
So sus.
So sus, come on, Among Us was funny.
But it's true. I mean, that was the way it was right after 9/11. You had a beard and it was like suddenly it was like someone's calling the FBI hotline. Like, you know,
Exactly. So
you know?
when are we expecting our sequel? When do we get to talk to you again?
This one I'm going to pump out probably a little quicker than the last book. Sorry to
I
use the
believe
word
in you.
pump out. It's so ugly. Probably like I'm going to say 2 years. It'll
Sweet.
take me about 2 years
Okay.
to get this puppy going. But I'm really excited. I'm like super. I'm in it. I'm looking at my little map, and I worked out their new tour. We're crossing the country again. This time they're going to be a little more settled into. They're going to have some more luxuries. So I'll
And what's the title so we can look forward to it, understanding that it's a working title?
I don't have one.
Okay.
I
I
don't
kind of
have one.
appreciate that. I have a hard time naming things.
Yeah, it's called Book 3 right now.
Ooh, book
Ooh,
three.
That's what it
book
says on the top.
three.
Book 3.
Slanted Enchanted Somewhere in Hollywood, Book 3.
Well, we will put links to the fascinating things we discussed during this episode on our website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. Lisa, thank you so much for both sending us copies of this book and letting us come and talk to you about it. We love it.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you for reading the book, and thank you for talking about my book with me. It's just, I don't get to do this often enough, so this was really cool. Thank you very much.
Everybody out there, you should definitely go ahead and read these two books, especially Welcome to Hollywood. It can be standalone. And Lisa's great to talk to, so have her on your show. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Bye.
You've been listening to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm put together by the hosts. Our main web magic is cast by Deirdre Schween, and our sound engineer magic is cast by Ksenia Chernievskia, with backup by David Welsh and John Schmidt. Our intro and exit music are performed by Michael Engberg, who lives down under running Tin Can Music School. Our podcast sponsors are Jackal Designs, The Bean Scene, Arm Street, and wherever you like to take your notebook or laptop and just sit and write. And hey, thanks for listening.